Hey everyone, welcome to the very first episode of Maximum Gain, the show with an introspective look at rock and metal music as well as other genres, along with special discussions on film and other forms of entertainment, all as experienced by your host. And I am your host, Aarya. Now let's hear that opening theme, please. I don't know if you all like that opening thing, but I was working on it for a little while. Not too long, but I was working for a little while, and after a point, I just got into writer's block. I couldn't think of any other theme, so I was like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to render this out. I'm going to use this as my official theme. So hope you like that. And if you didn't, I'm sorry. So I've been wanting to start a podcast for a while now, since about middle of 2020, when all of us were basically locked in trying to figure out something creative to do. If we had the privilege to, to have that time to be creative, and I had that time. So I was thinking, I want to put my thoughts down on multiple things. I want to speak about things that I care about. I want to speak about my life because I'm not a person who has ever done journal entries or diary entries. Never. So for me, I was always thinking, and I'm in the sound field, by the way. So for me, I was always thinking, I want to use this podcast format. I want to use this podcast format to do multiple things. And finally, now the day has come when I am, doing my first episode of the Maximum Gain podcast. And unfortunately, I'm a little sick. I have a cough because I generally shouldn't be having cold drinks at night with the fan on, but I did, and that has caused me issues right now. But I will try to push through this and give you all a really fun, entertaining episode. Now, most of you might be wondering, okay, why should I be listening to this guy? What is this podcast about? I know nothing really, about this guy. So let me start with introductions. My name is Aarya Nambiar. Aarya Nambiar. Yeah, no, it came out wrong there. My name is Aarya Nambiar. I am a filmmaker, film composer, and sound engineer. Pretty much in the entertainment field, visual entertainment, audio entertainment. Been interested in sound for a very, very long time. As you'll hear my journey also as the episodes go on. But basically, I've been just fascinated by sound ever since I was pretty much a toddler. And I finally now found a way to actually do some sort of a not an autobiography. And first of all, I'm only 21 years old right now. I was born in 1999. I'm only 21, but I don't have any kind of record or basically any kind of proof of any moment or instance in my life, no journal entries, no anything like that. So why not construct a narrative series where I can talk about my life? Now, moving on to the content of the podcast, I'm going to have one series of episodes called Since 99. Is it Since 99? Yeah, Since 99. I had to just look at my notes, honestly. So, Since 99 will be a narrative series where I'm going to be talking about how music has influenced me throughout my entire life. And I mean, influenced me in the sense that how did it force me to get into the sound field, music field, and how did music influence my decisions, my decision making? That's a big thing that I'm going to bring up. Music has always influenced my decision making in tense situations. I've always sat down, listened to music, and actually gotten a clear head as to what I'm going to be doing after I make this decision. So that's a big thing with music and me. I absolutely love, I don't know anyone who doesn't love listening to music. I hope there's no one who doesn't love listening to music. Any kind of music I'm talking about, any kind of music. I love music. So I wanted to make this whole podcast about music. Hence the Since 99 series, where I'm going to be talking about how music has influenced my life journey throughout since 1999, the year I was born. Besides that, I am going to be doing two other series on the same podcast. One will be one-off episodes where I'm going to be discussing very particular topics of my interest, and obviously going to be giving my own opinions, so other people's opinions may differ. So these topics could range from anything from like, why is this genre now considered dead? Or why was the 90s the best time for rock and metal? I love all genres of music, but without a doubt, we all have our favorite genres. My favorite genres are definitely in the rock spectrum, more in the hard rock spectrum, and there are just so many hundreds and hundreds of subgenres when you go down the hard rock way, So I wanted to really explore that, and I wanted to. So I'm from India, and I want to connect with not only people abroad, of course, but mainly with Indians who feel the same way as I do about hard rock and metal. I feel that there is definitely an underground community of metalheads that I am so proudly a part of. So I want to connect with them through these one off episodes. And I also want to connect with them through interviews, which will be the third type of content on my podcast. The interviews with bands, different artists, bands from India and abroad. I've already gotten a few yeses, a few, people who have committed to actually appearing on the podcast. And I'm not going for people who may have a big name. In fact, I mean, let's be serious here. I'm just a newbie podcaster. So I'm going to try and get as many people as I can, because I just love anyone who loves music and who creates music. So I want to give them a voice on this channel. I want to hear their life story out and see what made them go from, say, the Bee Gees, from the Bee Gees to Lamb of God. There are actually people, who've gone from, disco to, say, Bring Me the Horizon, or you want to go even deeper than that, Meshuggah. Only metalheads will know these bands, I'm pretty sure. So those are the three types of content I'm going to be having on the channel. The interviews won't be as recurring as the other two, but I'm going to try my best to get interviews out. But we'll have to cross our fingers and just hope. And now that we got introductions out of the way, you know who I am. I'm from India, by the way, in case I may have missed that point. I'm from India. So I'm going to be speaking a lot about very particular situations I've gotten myself into in India. Some may consider this universal, some may only relate because they know India and they know certain things that go on in India. And I just can't wait to start cooking this amazing, amazing dish by the end. And that's a terrible, terrible analogy. I don't know what I was trying to say there. I don't know what I was trying to say there. I just can't wait for you all to hear, to just experience another person's perspective on music. I hope even if one person can relate to my life experiences, that'll be great. That'll be like, I'll just be through the roof, I'll be so happy. If not, then I hope you enjoy my other types of content. Also, a quick heads up, this episode will not contain any bad language. I'm trying to actually omit any kind of bad language from the Since 99 series up until I reach the age of 10 or 12, because that's when I actually started learning a lot of bad words and using them a lot. So I really want to give my first few years as an interesting experience to people who may be a little too young to know what certain words mean, or to know to be hearing those words at all. So please, the first few episodes since 99, crank up the volume, listen to it loud on your speaker, through your speaker, while you're cooking, while you're doing other work, or if you're just sitting down, you just want to listen to a nice story. Please crank this up, because there will be no cursing, so that your parents don't blame you, or people around you don't suddenly be like, what are you listening to? So yeah, enjoy. Let's start with episode 1 of Since 99. Episode 1, The Somersault. It's 1999. Hyderabad, India. I was born on December 12th, 1999. And a lot of interesting things were going on in 99, at the turn of the century. A lot of interesting things were going on. And of course, I'm sure many of you might know the whole Y2K thing. And of course, so many artists that were so huge at the time. I'm just gonna just put down names: Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, a lot of boy bands. Backstreet Boys, NSYNC. Britney Spears was huge. I think she was the highest selling artist for a little while, in the US at least. Then you had Robbie Williams from the UK. You had Celine Dion. How can I forget about Celine Dion? She was fresh off of Titanic and a bunch of hit albums. Then there were some other bands that were also showing up on. So MTV had Total Request Live, which was a show some of you may remember, some of you may not. Total Request Live would be, counting down top 10 biggest songs, most requested songs of the week by fans. And you'd see, Britney Spears and Sync, Backstreet Boys, Britney Spears and Sync, Backstreet Boys. And suddenly there were some other bands that at the time when I was 0 years old, I hadn't heard of these bands, to be honest with you. Korn, Limp Bizkit, no idea. We'll see if those bands ended up influencing my life in some way. But moving on, that was the kind of music going on in the US. In India, there was Lucky Ali, there was Daler Mendi, there was A.R. Rahman. I mean, A.R. Rahman's been a part of our music culture for the past 30 years now, basically, and he was fresh off of a bunch of different big hits at the time. So he was doing hit songs, constantly for Hindi cinema, for other types of film industries as well. He was huge, understandably so. So that was basically the music going on at the time, but my parents, my wonderful, wonderful parents, Joe Nambiar and Bridget Nambiar, who I call Pop and Mom respectively, they were mainly listening to. My mom is a big jazz head. Jazz. She loves a lot of Brazilian music, and my dad loves mainly classic rock. A lot of classic rock. He listens to a lot of different things, but mainly classic rock, like Eric Clapton. He likes the Rolling Stones. I know he's a big Jethro Tull fan. That's something I found out only just in the past few years, but a big Jethro Tull fan. And of course, a lot of classic disco groups like the Bee Gees. So you could see like that's basically going to be starting off as my influence, those artists that my parents were actually listening to. But moving away from music now, we're in the hospital. I forgot. I think the name of the hospital is pretty much irrelevant, but we're in the hospital. My father is there. My mom, of course, is in a lot of pain and just, can't wait to get me out of her. My brother, who was almost 8 years old at the time, was also there. And we had a dog at the time who was 2 years old. I think he was at home. He was not at the hospital. He was at home. His name was Hager. Love that dog. I'm going to be bringing him up a lot in future episodes. But in the hospital, my mom was having difficulties actually giving birth to me. There were a lot of issues with my birth on that day, and these issues kind of stood awake, stood present for years of my life, years into my life. What happened was my mom had to undergo C-section to get me out. When I was out, instantly there were issues. My mom was extremely weak. At the time, she was extremely, extremely weak. Over the past few months before she gave birth to me, she was anyways quite weak, unable to keep any food down, was getting, her just immune system was definitely going down a bit. And finally, when I came out, there were clearly some issues that were passed on. Unfortunately, there was no, there weren't issues that were passed on, but I had issues when I was born, and this is where I'm going to bring up one very interesting thing. Why is this episode called The Somersault, you might ask? Why is it called The Somersault? Well, this is a very crude way of putting it, but my brother keeps on bringing this up, The Somersault. In 1999, I'm just going to bring this up. This is an interesting fact. Someone who shares a birthday with me, a great South Indian actor. that's very subjective, great South Indian actor, but very popular. Yeah, he was a very popular South Indian actor who shared same birth date with me. Not the exact same date, but December 12th, basically. This person did a lot of somersaults, did a lot of action stunts, pretended to do a lot of action stunts during that time, and this person was none other than Rajnikant. And while I was inside my mom watching Rajnikant movies, of course, I thought, hey, let me try this somersault move. And okay, jump, kick, flip, and wrap my neck around the umbilical cord and come out choking and swallowing some liquid. That was what kind of happened, to put it in a very crude sense. I came out, I was having breathing issues. My legs were apparently curled up as well, which was something that they didn't know at the time what was going on. Even the doctor was trying to do a diagnosis, and even to this day, my mom and dad aren't very clear as to why that was happening. So when I came out, immediately doctor started pumping my stomach or something, I believe. Again, I'm getting all these stories through my mom and dad, who were very, very open with me, sometimes excruciatingly so open with me about certain things. But basically, the doctor immediately started, pumping water on me. My dad was tense. My mom was, of course, in serious shock and pain. I do not know what my brother was doing. I don't. But that was what was happening that day. And, well, I mean, see, clearly it has a happy ending. I'm alive. But that was what was going on. And for 15 days, my mom and I were in the hospital. 15 days. It was apparently a very, very tense time. But after those 15 days, finally, we got to go home. Now, as I said, Hyderabad. I was born in Hyderabad, so we went back home to our small. I think it was actually it was a bungalow we were staying in at the time, a bungalow, and I mean, it was a good enough space apparently. But I heard a good enough space for all five of us, including my dog, and my mom and I were just recuperating. So my mom and dad, they used to work back then and they're still working even today. They are ridiculously hard workers in their own professions and at home, in fact. But back then, clearly, my mom had to take maternity leave. She was mainly a trainer for many company teams, and she was mainly into human resources. So she was actually a part of the human resources department, head of the human resources department. And my dad was doing multiple things. It'll be hard to get through all of them, so I'm just going to say he's a proper businessman, and he was doing a lot of different projects and working with different people at the time. So that's when actually something happened. The first 4 months of my life on this beautiful blue planet, that's not basically a beautiful plastic planet, but beautiful blue planet, my first 4 months were in Hyderabad. Then, after those 4 months, immediately my parents thought, you know what, we should go to Bangalore. And this was a big decision to make, and something that affected my life quite radically, because I have spent most of my life in Bangalore. I've spent most of my life in Bangalore. And one interesting thing that happened when we shifted to Bangalore was that a lot of our relatives, I mean, a lot of basically my aunt, uncles, even my grandmother and grandfather, maternal side, they actually shifted to Bangalore as well. Many of them were in different places. We were all over the place. We were in Hyderabad. Someone else was in someone else was in Bangalore. Someone else was in Mangalore. Someone else was in Jaipur and all that stuff. And then eventually we all ended up in Bangalore in the year 2000. I don't know if you all have seen that Conan O'Brien sketch. I love Conan O'Brien, by the way. He's my favorite talk show host. And he always has this sketch like, the year 2000. It was the year 2000. With Jack Black. You should check it out on YouTube. I don't know why I suddenly remember that. But yeah, basically it was the year 2000. When we all moved there, it was really nice. Family was all together and everything. We moved into a house. Obviously, it was a house. We moved into a house. And my parents constantly refer to this house as 907. It had no name or anything. It was numbered, so it was 907 house. So when we were planning to go to Bangalore, there was the question that came up is like, okay, we got to transport Hager very safely. So one interesting thing happened. My dad planned for Hager to be transported by train along with two other people who were basically these security guard type people that he knew. So he got to, have him go with them. And I remember my mom and my parents, my brother was worried, like, oh, will he get fed enough or is everything all right with Hager and everything? So finally, when he arrived in Bangalore, my dad and I think my brother went to go pick him up and they realized that the guards were so kind to him and were feeding him endlessly, feeding him chicken biryani and bones and meat and just endlessly, so much so that when my dad saw him, he was apparently Hager was apparently so stuffed, so full, and he actually looked like he had put on weight inside of, like, 1.5 days. He had put on weight, which was hilarious. I can only imagine like how funny that may have been. He even had trouble like just walking back, because he was just like in the train bogie for that long, eating all the time. So he arrived safely. Finally, when we got everything settled in 907, my health was still pretty much the same. Was still, it was apparently, actually, this was in Hyderabad, but the first 2 3 months when I was in Hyderabad, my dad took me to the hospital almost every day to get a checkup or to just check on my lungs, and they had to do certain procedures by pumping out water from me or something like that. For the first 2 to 3 months, it was really bad apparently. But then when we moved to 907, it was definitely the issues were had calmed down a bit, but I was still having issues uh, breathing at times, eating even. So this house 907, I don't remember much about this house. I really don't. I spent my first 3.5 years in this house. There were a lot of things that happened. Obviously, there were a lot of things that happened with my parents and my brother and all this. A lot of good things. I mean, I don't mean to sound bad there, but a lot of different things that happened, and that I was just crawling all over the place, hiding places, and making my parents tense where I was hiding in the washing machine or something. That actually happened once. My parents couldn't find me for almost a whole day, and I went inside one of those low, you know, kind of those lower door washing machines. It was yeah, it was weird. It was tense, but so my mom and dad were very, like, they would have a lot of home parties. They would go out a lot. They would have a lot of home parties, and also apparently my brother was like having the hell of a time. You know, I was there at the time, but like he was, basically just, he was 8 years old, 9 years old, and there were a lot of house parties, a lot of family friends coming over and family and all that stuff. So they used to love doing that, and that carried on. That kind of free spirit and energy with my parents and all carried on when we moved into our next house, which was the one I remember a lot, Fountainhead. Cue the creepy music, by the way, Fountainhead, because that house, there were a lot of interesting things that went on there that were unusual. Definitely some good moments in that house, but I've heard mainly bad moments in that house. So, Fountainhead, we moved in, I think, late 2003. What happened was my parents bought that house. And when I say house, I mean like 10 floor house, 10 floor building. It really was. It was, or at least 8 floors. It was a large building. So at the time, when we were staying in that house, my brother was going to, actually, he had just left a school called Anveshana. And there he had met a lot of friends that he knows even today. He catches up with even today. But so basically, his friends from Anveshana moved to another school called Namashale. In fact, I think one of the teachers also from Anveshana, I think, founded Namashale, which was a Montessori school located in Hennu Road. It's closed down since 2012. It's been shut, but it was such an amazing school. I studied there I studied there quite a bit. My brother, he studied there and finished 10th in that school. But I'll get to more interesting things about that place later. But basically, he had just moved to Namashale, which was a big thing. And I was basically on my butt everywhere. And I was actually, given a lot of TV time, a lot of TV watching time. My parents used to travel a lot, especially my mom. My mom traveled so much at one point where I remember I used to be so sad when she used to leave. I used to cry and used to beg her not to leave. And this actually carried on till I was 8 years old, to be honest with you. Till I was 8 years old, I used to cry and tell her not to go because I remember at least the first, when I was 4 years till about 7 years, she used to travel a lot. And I used to see her just about 2, 3 days a week, maybe 2, 3 nights a week when I started school. So that problem was there, but you'll soon learn how it eventually concluded when I was 8 or 9 years old. So as I was saying, while I was in this house, my parents were traveling a lot. My dad actually operated his own business through that same building because there were so many floors. Some were given out to other tenants and stuff like that, but he had his office in the ground floor, which is great because I got to see him quite a bit. But still, they were busy. My brother, of course, was going to school and back. My brother, by the way, his name is Advit, in case I didn't mention that. Advit, I'm going to be bringing him up a lot. So you might be wondering who was taking care of me? What was I doing all this time? And as I said, I was on my butt watching TV a lot. And there was a wonderful, wonderful person looking after me during that time when my parents weren't there. She was our maid, and she was just, she was so close with me. Her name was Philomena. We called her Philo. It wasn't actually until I was 10 years old when I realized, oh, her full name is Philomena. But whatever, I call her Philo. And she was awesome. She used to, play a lot with me. She used to do so many things around that house. And trust me, okay. Now she stayed along with us in that house. She had a room there, and she stayed with her daughter and I think with her brother as well. I mean, looking after a house that big is no joke. It's just no joke. So one day, now this is a big change for me. One day I was watching TV and I was flipping through Naughty, Oswald, some show with really bad animation where there were these kind of paper, these chart paper cutouts of certain characters. Some of the characters were named Cartman, Kyle, Kenny, Stan, Chef. These, okay, I never used to, by the way, these characters are from the show South Park. I never used to watch this show, but definitely I would flip by once in a while, but I would be really, bored by the animation and what they were talking about. Heavily censored, but I just wasn't interested in that. So one day I was flipping through channels, and then my dad came in and said, now it didn't happen exactly like this, but I'm trying to give you like a nice dramatic moment for you to understand how this one sentence changed my life forever. My dad came to me and said, you know what? You're old enough now, Aarya. It's time for you to go to school. School. Yeah, I was supposed to go to shul from then on. This school I went to was Namashale. Now, I will say it was my greatest schooling experience ever. It really was. But I didn't know it would be at the time when I was, to be honest with you, when I was being forced to go to school. I didn't want to go. Obviously, when you're at home watching TV, getting all your meals made and all that stuff, you're in heaven basically, or at least you think you are because you don't have any other creative purpose in life, right? As yet. So I was taken to my first day in school, and my God, that whole first week was such a mess. And people, I'm sure, were annoyed like crazy with me because I would be non-stop crying and begging to go back home and watch TV. I need to go back home. I want to watch TV. I need to go back home. I want to watch TV. If I had met myself like that age, if I had, today, if I had met a 4-year-old self of mine, oh my God, I would ignore that person. Like, constantly ignore that person. Okay, I wouldn't ignore that person, but I'm sure, like, while trying to figure out a compromise, I would be so annoyed by fourth grade Aarya. Sorry, not fourth grade Aarya. fourth, basically a nursery Aarya. So finally, when we multiple days passed, and I was, being dragged out of the bus. My teacher would take me, and I would cry. I wouldn't listen to people, and also I didn't have any friends. It was all new people to me, new faces, so it was a very, big thing for me. And I don't know if other people, face the same thing, but I was really, really, honestly, like, just kind of distressed for a little while. Like, where am I? What am I doing? My brother also used to go somewhere else, because this school was so big, and so there were different sections of the school. There was the pre-primary, there was the primary, there was elementary, and then there was Earth Kinder, which was, basically, I think from 7th grade to 10th, and then you'd graduate from there. Uh, you'd, graduate 10th. So that was all the divisions of the school. Again, wonderful, wonderful school. But at the time, I was just so fussy and so unwilling to accept, like, I need to start getting used to this place. So I used to constantly fuss still. Like, I want to watch TV, I want to watch TV. Until finally, the principal, wonderful person, my favorite principal of all time, really my favorite principal of all time, her name was Rama. She heard that there's this brat that is making a ton of noise across India. He's a menace to Bangalore. We must stop him. And finally she came, and she actually stopped me from crying, stopped me from fussing, and made me realize that I should behave a certain way and act a certain way in a school. And she did this I remember this very well. Now, as I said, I was asking to watch TV a lot, right? So one day she came to the class, and she was like wondering, like, oh, I mean, everyone was wondering, oh, why is she here? So she took me, held me by the hand gently, and took me to the elementary division, which is pretty much an open kind of large workspace. And there was a library there. So she said, okay, we're going to go to the library. There's a TV there. So I was like, oh, finally, someone gets me. TV, thank you. If you want, you can watch with me, strange lady. So we went up to the library, and she sat me down, in front of the TV. It was dusty. The TV was dusty, I remember. I was wondering, like, okay, fine, we can dust that later, leave it. She sat me down. She was like, okay, there's your TV. And she started walking away. And I was like, wait, what about the channels? What about you didn't switch it on. Where am I going to catch my shows? And she was like, but no, I told you there was a TV. Here's the TV. I never said it worked. And I remember I was at a loss of words, and I started crying again. It's like, no, there should be channels here. If it doesn't work, what's the point? Or something like that I was saying in my very poor vocabulary at the time, using my very poor vocabulary at the time. But then she basically made me stand up, and we went to the balcony of the library, which was, kind of open. It had bars, and obviously for protection and all that stuff, it was there, but it was open, and we could look down and see everyone working with their materials. Also, this was where I realized I had an intense fear of heights. When we were there, I was so scared, holding onto the bar, barely looking down, holding her hand. I'm sure she also must have noticed that I had a fear of heights. And we were looking down, and I saw all of them working, all these people who I didn't know, that I'm so happy I got to know from then on. Well, actually, a few years down the line, because I was too young at the time, but a few years down, I got to know all of them. They were all working with their materials. They were all just having fun, doing projects together, all of that. So many kids. And she said, like, you have to learn how to behave in a place like this. You can do a lot of fun things, but you need to speak to people. You need to stop asking to watch TV, because no one wants to watch TV while they're here. That really kind of made me understand, okay, I'm going to be here for a while. I should be considering this my second home, basically. And I'm going to be learning a lot more here than I will be at home, most likely, a lot more here. So from then on, I was just kind of a little calmer, a little better to manage. So eventually it was just, I was really happy that conversation had happened between her and I. And so one day I was this was my second week or third week or something in pre-primary, and I was with my teacher along with my other students, and she was teaching us some simple thing like this is how you roll a mat, or some very very simple things, that you learn at 4 years old when you're in a Montessori school, and how to basically just take care of materials and whatnot. And we'd also have a whatever math class and your dictionary. I'm not dictionary, what I'm saying, dictation and stuff like that. But I remember there was one friend there that actually he was my first friend I ever had in Namashale. His name was Jatin. Awesome dude. I still keep in touch with him today. Once in a while, but I still keep in touch with him today. Very thankful for that. He he approached me and he said, "Hey, you want to play Power Rangers once school is over?" I was like, Power Rangers? What? Power Rangers? I don't even watch Power Rangers. Why would I want to play Power Rangers? But then I realized, I gotta say yes to something that someone offers me, or someone, wants to play with me or something to move on in life. So I said, okay, yeah, Power Rangers sounds cool. And he used to be so obsessed with Power Rangers. Even during some classes, he'd distract me and he'd be like, "Hey, after school, no, we'll have a little playtime. So we'll go out and we'll play Power Rangers. You be the green Power Ranger because no one else wants to be it. I'll be the red Power Ranger. I'll control everything, and then we'll play. Okay, we'll have a nice time. Okay, bye." And then after he backed off after saying that. Then the teacher would come to me and was like, "Ariman, did you hear what I said?" And I was, yeah, no, I didn't hear what you said, ma'am. I was speaking to the Power Ranger kid who won't stop talking about Power Rangers. He really was. He may, there may be disputes over this, but I remember very clearly he was just so in love with Power Rangers, the show, and the game, these weird games itself. So basically, this game was, so when the bell rang, we had half days back then. So it was 12 o'clock, 12:30, and we'd have like 20-30 minutes of playtime, recreational time. And we would play this game, Power Rangers, that was so stupid. To this day, I don't understand what this game was about, what the main objective of this game was about. How you'd win this game, I have no idea. It was basically we were all assigned a certain color Power Ranger, whatever. I was green. I don't know why I remember that, but I was green. And we were given these. So basically, we had to, listen to our leader, Jatin, and he'd be like, okay, find some special rocks and then assign a power to it. Now, basically, we'd have to find like a really interesting, cool looking rock. If we found like just a piece of granite or something, it'd be like, no, that doesn't count. Go drop that and be imaginative. For God's sake, be imaginative. So we'd go and we'd find a really cool looking rock. So what did we have to do with these rocks, basically, once we found these rocks? So then we'd speak to our leader. He would tell us, okay, what you have to do is you have to assign a special particular power to this rock that no one else has. And then you have to keep that rock with you at every game. And he said, every game that we play over the course of the next few weeks, months, years. And I was like, oh my God, next years? No. So he said, like, this is your rock. There are others like it, but that one is yours. Or sorry, I think it's supposed to be the other way. This is my rock. There are others like it, but this one's mine, and whatnot. But the point was to have rocks that weren't like others, basically. So basically that's all we had to do, and we'd use these powers to find other power stones or something like that. There was nothing particularly interesting about it, but the fact was that I still had fun because I was with a new group of friends, that my first ever group of friends, Try to remember your first group of friends, and see if you are still in touch with any of them, because I'm in touch with only one of them, and that's Jatin. And I'm very thankful to have met that guy, and not thankful to have played Power Rangers, no, but thankful to have met him, thankful to have had that group of friends to really help me through school, help me, not just that year, but even years way ahead of that. It really helped me a lot. And it helped me forget about the fact that I miss my mom when she's traveling, or help me forget about the fact that I miss TV, or I miss home, I miss Philo, I miss my dogs. So what happened was, after that, slowly music started to creep in as an interest. We had music classes in the school. At home, my dad had just gotten this drum, this kind of antique drum that I was fascinated by. And I remember we had a friend also who'd come over at the house once in a while, and he used to play piano. Oh, sorry. I don't think it was a friend. I think it was my uncle. My uncle, he plays piano a little bit, so he was playing piano. So slowly I started to get interested in music, and I used to listen to a lot of a lot of strange stuff at the time, which I will bring up in future episodes. But this is basically how slowly now, from 4.5 years onwards, I'm definitely getting interested in music, and coming from my parents' influence, my parents' side, my brother's side, which is a major influence in my music listening career. I would listen to a lot of music from then on and really try to pay attention to what instruments are being used in this and what style is this, what is this thing, genres and all that stuff. So I think I'll end today's episode right here. Right here. I am having an okay time in school now. Things are getting a little better. We're in this house. Remember, we're in Fountainhead now. So a lot of interesting things will be brought up from now on about Fountainhead. Thank you all so much for listening to this episode, the first episode of the Maximum Gain podcast, the first episode of the Since 99 podcast. Been wanting to do that thing in particular for a while, as I said before. So I just hope you all stick around because it's going to get really interesting from the next episode onwards. For further updates on the podcast, you can follow my social media handles, Aaryaman Nambiar on Facebook, Aarya_guy, that's AARYA _GUY on Instagram. I'll be giving you updates on the podcast, and I'll further update you on what the schedule will be like for all these episodes that honestly are pretty exciting. I hope to see you all back very soon. And as always, I hope you stay safe and I hope you stay happy. Thanks.